Good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome all participants to this Multi-Generational Center Feasibility Study Service Area 3 virtual community meeting hosted by Parks and Recreation of National Capital Park and Planning Commission. Service Area 4. Welcome community members, staff, and elected officials. I'd like to take this time to remind participants that throughout the meeting, you can submit questions. We have coordinators who will actively gather your questions throughout the meeting, address them live in some cases, and in other cases, address them to the entire audience. So you may get those responses directly or to the entire audience at the conclusion of the presentation. Also, we will ask that you participate in a few polls. When prompted, please submit your response by selecting an option in the GoToWebinar window. And again, we will be collecting questions throughout, and please find the question panel, submit them at any time throughout the presentation. We value your input. Today's meeting, we value your input.
Valoramos a su opinión.
Today's meeting will be in English. The presentation materials will be available in English and Spanish beginning November 10th at www.pgparks.com.
La reunión de hoy será en inglés. Los materiales de presentación estarán disponibles en inglés y español a partir del 10 de noviembre en el website www.pgparks.com.
There will be a meeting and presentation in Spanish on November 19th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Questions, comments, and feedback can be shared with the planning team in English or Spanish. Look for more information on the upcoming meetings on www.pgparks.com.
Habrá una reunión y presentación en español el 19 de noviembre de 6:30 a las 8 de la noche. Las preguntas y los comentarios se podrán compartir con el equipo de planificación en inglés o en español durante esa presentación. Obtenga más información sobre las próximas reuniones en el mismo website que antes, el www.pgparks.com.
Hey, Karen, you're muted for us. Thank you. Well, now I'm going to our background and overview, starting with introductions. So I am your host for tonight, Karen Somerville. I'm a consultant with Brailsford and Dunleavy, supporting Parks and Recs with engagement and communications efforts. You'll also hear from Bridget Stesney, who's with Parks and Recreation, Kayla Anthony, who's also with Brailsford and Dunleavy, Amado Fernandez, who is with the Hughes Group Architects, as well as Harold Johnson, who's with CJR. I'd now like to turn it over to Bridget Stesney for the first part of the background and overview.
It looks like we have an audience poll to start us off tonight. If you could just take a second, let us know how you heard about tonight's meeting. We'd love the feedback to hear how you're hearing about our outreach for the meeting. We'll give folks a few minutes to do that. I think we're almost done collecting answers. Thanks so much. It looks like, wow, a big majority of folks have heard about the meeting from an email blast or a listserv. Thanks so much for sharing that. And then there's a second poll tonight. If you could let us know what age group you fall in, helps us know how our outreach is being received and how we can help improve how we're reaching out to folks of all ages. Just a few more seconds. Wow, it looks like we really need to work on our outreach to those folks under the age of 30. Thanks for providing those answers to those opening polls. We appreciate the feedback. This poll just wants to we'd like to hear a little bit more about what facilities you've used, recreation facilities you've used in the past year. We know this year might be a little bit unique, especially the last 7 months or so. So please take a second and let us know what recreation facilities you've been using. Love to get a few more folks participating if possible. Wow, thanks so much. Lots of folks outside in parks and trails, especially during COVID. I know that's been really important for folks to have that opportunity, and lots of indoor rec center use. Thank you so much for giving us that feedback.
Seems like it's stuck on the poll. 1 second as I try to get it to go back to the slides. There we go.
Great. Thanks, Kayla. I'm just going to spend a few minutes providing you a little bit of background and overview on our multi-generational effort here at Parks and Recreation. So in 2013, the department, in partnership with the community, developed the Formula 2040 Functional Master Plan for Parks and Recreation. This plan establishes a framework that really makes sure we're thinking about the needs of parks and recreation facilities as our county continues to grow. The plan divided the county into 9 service areas, which you see on this map, based on a 15-minute drive time. It analyzed indoor, recreation, and aquatic needs, and actually looked at some ideal locations for new multi-generational centers in each service area across the county. The recommendations from 2040 have already been put into action. We're seeing our first multi-generational center was opened up earlier this year in March of 2020, and we're already chugging along on our second one to open early in 2021. So now we get to turn to the northern and central areas of the county and our multi-generational efforts. Next slide. Thanks, Kayla. In developing Formula 2040, we found that many residents don't actually use the smaller community centers closer to their homes, and that residents were actually willing to drive 15 minutes to a center that had more programs of interest. For the department, we actually found that it was more economically viable for us to build larger centers where residents can access a wider variety of programs, and that this would build on to our current network of community centers, not replace them, but allow us to hopefully serve more people in one location. Next slide. I'm sure many of you are familiar with your typical community center. Often it would have a gym, maybe a multi-purpose room or a fitness area. But I wanted to show you the 2 multi-generational centers we have in the county already. The first one is in Service Area 9 in Brandywine in the southern part of the county. It opened in March, and it has a double gym, an elevated track, extensive fitness area, many multi-purpose spaces, and an indoor aquatic space. The one on the right is in Service Area 8. Down at what we call South Tech Rec. The indoor recreation facility is open and operating, but the indoor aquatic facility is under construction and will open in 2021. And as you can see, these are definitely suburban types of development, but offers a wider range of programming that offers a little bit of something for everyone. The development here in the northern and central areas of the county will definitely be a little bit different and more of an urban environment, and that's possible. Different kind of design, different kind of property, and so we're excited to work with you and hear from you on what kind of amenities will fit into these new multi-generational centers so we can find the right space and the right property. And as you can see here, this is an example of a YMCA in Toronto. So before we conduct any new facility, our process is to conduct a feasibility study like we're doing for the multi-generational centers to really inform the project, to make sure we have the right approach, we're building the right building with the right programs, and also make sure that we're thinking about the viability of operating the center. So the 3 service areas that are now in most need are areas 2, 3, and 4. And this was determined in 2040 by looking at the number of existing facilities on the ground, the population projection, age and conditions of existing facilities, and the recent investment there. So again, the focus of this effort is really a feasibility study and a business plan to help us figure out the exact location, amenities, and programs for the next multi-generational centers. This slide here shows you a little bit of our timeline as we work on our feasibility study, and we're here in the public communities, or the public meetings effort in this initial phase. And so we're looking forward to working with you and from hearing from you tonight and throughout the process as we think about, again, the future of the multi-generational centers for the northern and central areas of the county.
Thank you so much, Bridget. And another reminder to all participants, you can ask questions at any time. We have coordinators that are answering questions live. And other questions will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation. Now we'd like to turn it over to Kayla Anthony, who will take us through demographic data.
Great, thanks, Karen. So we're going to dive into a little bit about the topic of the service area first here with an overview. And I actually saw one of our first questions, which is a really good one. Do the service areas align with the council districts? And the answer is they do not, because they were developed based on that drive time and people's preference for where they're willing to travel to recreate. These are developed based on that using some mapping techniques and data analysis. And so as you can see here, service area 4 actually crosses a few different council lines. And so we wanted to show you kind of what is included in service area 4. The Beltway 495 there makes up the eastern boundary. And then to the southwest, Washington, D.C. Is directly adjacent there to Cheverly. And so this is within the Beltway. It's a pretty dense area that's made up of 7 municipalities within the boundary. So several existing municipalities there. And there are a lot of outdoor parks and trails that are nearby to this area. Greenbelt Park is obviously a huge resource for the area, but even some of the smaller amenities within your neighborhoods we know are important. In addition to the major roads that go through this area, there's also 3 metro stations. And then it is envisioned that the future Purple Line would run through the central part of service area 4. One of the other things we wanted to take a look at early on was better understanding what facilities you currently have in the service area. And so you can see here really primarily 3 municipal or MNC PPC facilities serve this service area with an additional arts and culture center at the Public Playhouse down in the Bladensburg area. We did highlight Sports and Learning Complex. That is the multi-generational center for service area 5, and it is pretty close to the service area, so we wanted to highlight the location there. But I think one of the key findings for the service area is that there are no real private market opportunities, no consistent brick and mortar gyms or fitness centers that are located within this service area. And so when you compare that to the population of the area, there's not enough access to fitness or aquatics in the service area. You can see here when we look at the population, so what the actual demographics of the service area are, it's pretty dense. It compares to the density that we see in service area 2, which is your neighbor there near the Prince George's Plaza area. About 83,000 people live in this service area. It is projected to grow, but only slightly, especially when you compare it to your neighbors and the county growth rate. But there still is projected growth in the area. We use that top line of data to help inform the level of service for the service area. So do you have enough facilities, enough spaces to serve? And based on your population and what's existing there today, there is a big need for additional facilities in the area. The bottom line there is a little bit more on the characteristics of the service area itself. So we've selected 3 here, though we know there's a lot of other characteristics that we look at from a socioeconomic perspective, but median age helps us understand what types of activities you might be interested in, how you may get around among those activities. And so we can see that this area is trending younger. And when we break down, when we look at the breakdown of the age, we can actually see that there is a lot of youth. There's a large youth population in the service area. We can also see that by the average household size, which is larger than the county's average too. And then we look at median household income, because that helps inform what the service area, the people that reside there can access, what they can afford, what types of activities they might be willing to pay for, and what they might not have access to currently that they would not be able to pay as much for. So we actually know that there is a large population in the service area that is at an economic disadvantage. And so we consider that when planning for the service area and the multi-generational center. And the thing probably that you may notice that's not included on this slide, this area is really diverse from a racial and ethnic perspective, as well as from a language perspective. It is a majority Black or African American district, and it is also, there's a lot of languages that are spoken in this area, the primary one being Spanish. And so we do have some additional outreach planned to reach those specific populations and communities. And we've already been out in the community, and we've already been learning a lot in addition to the data that we've been collecting. We wanted to speak to several of you before we came to the broader community. We did that through some focus groups, as you saw on Bridget's slide, as well as stakeholder interviews that we conducted. And so there was really 3 key themes that came out of those conversations we had. The first was how important accessibility is, specifically physical access to the facility, but also broadening our perspective to think about the hours that a facility like this would be open, and even the access from a financial standpoint. So broadening our thinking on what the membership options might look like, or potential partnerships that would be worth pursuing to make this facility accessible. The second key theme centered on recreation. We were asking a lot about recreation, but the needs and the desires that we heard from the community was about this place where the community can come to meet together and socialize. We heard that there's not a really good place to do that currently in the service area, with a specific focus on your teen population and your seniors, people who want to age in place, or kids who need that third place to go after school or after their activities in the summer. And so there was certainly a desire we heard for fitness specific space, whether that's working out or weightlifting, but things that focus on improving health incomes. And then lastly, from an aquatics perspective, some of the things we heard early on was this desire to have a place where seniors could exercise. And again, it focuses on that teens and seniors that we heard about, senior exercise, but also youth sports opportunities and places where youth and teens can be a part of a swim club, perhaps. But adult lap swimming and learn to swim programs for our younger population was also something that was important to this community. So using the data that I, at a high level, just showed you, and then also the community input we received early on, we developed a preliminary program. And so this is based on what we were hearing early on, an early draft that we think is starting to get a fuzzy picture that we're going to try to focus in on a little more tonight of what the multi-generational center in this service area could look like. And so you'll see there 7 key elements for this multi-generational center that we want to talk about. And Amato from our team is going to talk about that here in the next section. But the biggest components are, you can see a pretty large 4,500 square foot fitness area where several activities, whether that's group fitness or more focused exercise, could take place, weightlifting. 2 courts, a double gymnasium, as well as an indoor track, which are some marquee elements of the multi-generational center itself. And then 4 multi-use rooms and 2 dedicated program rooms. We're going to talk a little bit more about what you might want to see in those rooms in just a minute. We did see a need, besides Teresa Banks, there really is no aquatic opportunity in the service area. And so an opportunity where you can swim laps or even visit for leisure swimming was something that arose as a need for the service area. And then lastly, 1 to 2 turf fields, so some kind of outdoor component for field play and sports that would serve the service area. So we have a couple of questions that we want to ask as part of this section. Let me launch those right here. So the first one, we might have got question 3 and 4 mixed up, but we still want to know this. In what part of our service area do you live? And so you recall the map. We're not able to list all of the communities. We do have a limit on the characters we can include here, but you can get a general sense of the neighborhood that are represented here. So let us know where you're joining us here tonight from. Give just another couple seconds. Great, thank you. So it looks like the majority of people are joining from the south or the central region. So thank you to those of you who are joining from those neighborhoods represented. And it looks like we need to make sure we bring in our neighbors in New Carrollton and the Greenbelt area in future engagement. So we will certainly focus on that. The second piece, the second question I want to ask, how would you like to access a multi-generational center in the service area? So let us know your preferred method of traveling to the multi-generational center. Just another second. Thank you. So it looks like the majority of individuals would prefer to access it by car, followed closely by bike. And then it seems like not many of attendees tonight, at least, are using the metro to access one of these. So with that, I will turn it back to Karen.
Thank you, Kayla. And thanks again, participants, for participating in the polls. We'll now turn it over to Amato Fernandez, who will take us into building program.
Right. Thank you, Karen. The program that Kayla discussed a little bit ago before the polls was based on surveys with stakeholder groups, with focus groups, and with some community input, and from the 2040 plan. So what we're here tonight is what we'd like to hear from you all, specifically your views on these spaces that are listed here, and we're going to kind of go through each one and talk about them and talk about a little of them. So can we go to the next slide? Thank you. The first space is the open fitness, strength, and training area, which includes the use of cardio machines, resistance weight machines, free weights, and potentially CrossFit equipment. And so that's the 4,500 square feet. And then it would also include some group fitness spaces, which would be large rooms, which would be able to address programs such as dance, aerobics, yoga, cycling, and Zumba, for example, or any other program that becomes viable. The next group of spaces are the courts. We talked about having two courts, two basketball courts, which could be also striped to do other functions such as volleyball, badminton, futsal, pickleball, roller skating, possibly kickball, and the indoor track, which in most cases would be separated from the gym. It'd be raised above the gym so that you can use the track and use the gym at the same time. Okay. Next slide. Then we provided multi-purpose rooms, and these multi-use rooms are for whatever function is required or desired in the community, such as religious services, language classes, civic associations, birthday parties, town halls and community meetings, and community gathering spaces. And potentially a warming kitchen would be included, depending upon whether the function of the room is such that it would need to be used, people would be fed. So the next slide, we have the dedicated program rooms. Now, these are rooms that are more specifically set up to deal with more focused programs, such as senior activities and teen activities, esports, e-gaming, computer technology lab, culinary instruction, or incubator kitchen, which would be you can either teach or you could use it as a business model. Health and wellness, martial arts or boxing, and then preschool and childcare for the space. What we'd like to do is we'd like to get a little bit more of an understanding of which of these dedicated programs you would be interested in. So we have a couple of polls coming up now. So the first one is, which category of dedicated program? We've listed 4 of the ones you saw, and what we'd like to do is have you select up to 2, 1 or 2, and tell us which ones you would prefer out of this group of all right, a little bit longer, just to make sure we get all of you, or as many of you as possible, involved in. All right, thank you very much. It looks like the dedicated gathering space for seniors and teens and the health and wellness are the 2 that were most favored. Now here's the poll, which we picked up on the remaining, on the other ones. So if you could again look and see if you would pick 1 or 2 of these, of which ones you would prefer to have in the multi-gen facility. All right, a little bit longer. Thank you very much for voting. All right, thank you. And in this one, it looks like computer technology lab is the one that received the most nods, with gymnastics, cheerleading, martial arts, boxing, and esports as a group. All right, thank you very much. The next series of spaces we're going to talk a little bit about are the aquatics component, and we have recreational aquatic opportunities such as leisure lap lanes, water aerobics, learn to swim, lazy river for full recreational use. Indoor splash park, again, that's a recreational leisure space. Or a therapy and wellness pool, which is a warmer pool for exercising, for seniors, for also you could do water aerobics there, and for other uses. And then we have aquatics, which are competition or instructional swimming. Again, it's lap lanes, but in this case, it's lap lanes for youth or adults that are practicing for competition. We have springboard diving, we could have platform diving, and then there's training for all of the lap swimming. So what we have a poll regarding aquatics, and we'd like to hear from you about what kind of program you would use most at a multi-generational center. So if you would, please go ahead and check one of the ones that you would prefer here. I think we'll wait a little bit longer. We're getting. Okay, thank you very much. It looks like the lap swimming or aquatic exercise classes would be the most preferred, with therapy and wellness, and then learn to swim and leisure swimming as the two. Thank you so much for that input. And the next group of spaces that we have are the outdoor programs. And those can be subdivided into the active outdoor programs, which are rectangular fields where you can play soccer, football, lacrosse, field hockey, depending upon how you stripe it, or the baseball or softball fields. These fields can be on grade if there's sufficient available space, or they can be on rooftops of garages or buildings, depending upon how urban the space becomes, and that'll be a function of the site selected. Those outdoor programs also include passive recreation, which include walking and jogging trails, playgrounds, community gardens, outdoor pavilions, and picnic areas. So with that, what I'd like to, the last poll with this, in this grouping, I would like to ask you which spaces of the ones we described are the highest priority to you, and if you would select up to 2 of the spaces listed. So please go ahead. Okay, a little bit longer. Okay, thank you very much. And it looks like flexible multi-purpose space received the most votes, with fitness, strength, and group fitness rooms being there right behind them. So thank you very much for your involvement and your participation on this. Oh, sorry. There's a 2-part for this one. Forgot. These are additional spaces that we would like you to tell us. Pick 1 or more of the following, up to 2 of these other spaces that are part of the recreation center. Thank you. Okay, we'll wait a little longer to see if we get more people involved. All right, excellent. Thank you so very much. And in this grouping, it looks like indoor track aquatics and the passive outdoor garden space all received about the same amount, and active outdoor space is close behind. So again, now, thank you very much for that participation. Karen?
Thank you so much, Amato. It looks like we had a couple of people join midway into the meeting. Just a reminder that we're gathering questions. Please feel free to share any questions that you have. We have coordinators that are answering live. We also accept comments, so feel free to list any comments that you may have. Next, we're going into site and location. You'll hear again from Kayla Anthony and Harold Johnson.
Thanks, Karen. So I'm going to go over just a couple of slides here, and then I'm going to hand it off to Harold. I'm more the project manager overseeing the process, but then Harold is our expert when it comes to the site. So how are we actually going to go about selecting a site? This is a pretty high level overview just to help you understand what that process is going to look like, but also to show you where we are today in that process. And so it begins with actually defining what we're looking for in a site, what the community would like to see in a site. And then actually identifying some potential sites and collecting data about that. Then we can move into the second phase, which is really evaluating those sites and applying some of the requirements that we're looking for, conducting the technical analysis, and ultimately getting down to a short list of the sites that we're interested in pursuing and conducting that confidential outreach if it's not a site that MNC PPC already owns. And then lastly, once we get through a lot of that, hopefully it results in the actual selection of a site. We're able to internally review that and do any particular or potential legal analysis that might be required, or making a final decision which the public would be aware of at that point. So I just wanted to give you the high level part. In terms of what the requirements, excuse me, that we're looking for are, this is a pretty high level overview of some of the questions that we're asking ourselves about some of the sites that are already in mind, even though we're interested in hearing more from you tonight on some potential sites. The first is about the location of it. Is it one that for the whole service area provides that regional appeal and fits into the broader network of what the commission offers in its existing community centers across the service area and the county? Does it connect into our other parks and recreation that exists? And is the location of it accessible, and how are we considering equity? How do we make sure that the site improves that for the residents of the service area? The second category is looking specifically at the site itself and asking, can we actually fit a multi-generational center on the site? And what might that building look like? Is it more of an urban model or a suburban model? Is there multiple ways to access it from transportation perspective? And will we have enough space for parking or for some of those outdoor amenities you mentioned that you're interested in, you know, the passive amenities? So, and lastly, looking at sustainability, we have to understand what it would actually cost, whether it's purchasing that site or if it's a site that's particularly hilly, what that might mean in terms of the cost to develop it. And then seeing if the site could help us achieve some of our environmental goals that we've set for ourselves, as well as aligning with the schedule goals. Can we actually, you know, develop it in the timeline that we're hoping to? So that's some of the requirements that we are looking at, but we actually want to hear from you about what might be important to you when we're thinking about a site. And so this question asks, what's more important to you? And we're asking 4 options there. So let us know your thoughts, please. I'll give you just a couple more seconds to respond. Great, thank you. So it looks like the majority of you on this meeting prefer for it to be located near where residents live or near an area that is underserved. Thank you for sharing that feedback. And one other question as part of this, so recognizing that trade-offs are often a part of making any kind of decision like this, we've kind of posed the question in a way that helps us understand what might be more important to you. Is it about finding that ideal location, or is it about making sure the entire program can be provided for? Just another couple of seconds here. Thank you. So it seems like there we go. There's a slight preference for having the program elements, even if perhaps it won't be in the most ideal location, though it is somewhat balanced there. So appreciate you participating in that, and I'm going to hand it to Harold.
Well, thank you, Kayla. And as we discussed earlier, Formula 2040 played a vital, important part of identifying a focus area for the multi-generation facility. And specifically, some of the key points was residents should live within 15 minutes of an indoor recreation center. So within this, the focus Formula 2040 identified an area at the intersection near Maryland 410 and Maryland 450 and the future Purple Line. And specifically, there are existing sites that the commission already owns. They own the park that's currently at the site, and that's the Glen Ridge Community Park. They also own the current site where the elementary school property is. Next slide. And so as we can see, it's just a kind of hone in on that area, just a little overview between 450 and 410. And one of the critical aspects of site selection is, can it meet the program? And a lot of what Armando said basically earlier about the program and some of the questions that you asked begin to hone in on, will a site work within this geographical area that has been a focus? And one of the big important pieces to this is where land is owned currently by the commission, how can we utilize that more effectively and see what else is around there that can fit within the programmatics itself. Next slide. And as you can see, where the Glen Ridge Elementary School that sits right behind the Giant Grocery, and that's on Gallatin Street, and the park, which is right to the left of the elementary school, sits right there, and then the new middle school that is currently being built off of 410, off of 450. And one of the most important aspects of this site, or this specific focus area that we're currently looking at, is that the commission owns the site. And now everything circles around, how do we save dollars? Although there's money in the budget specifically for site acquisition, but can we work with something that is already in hand? And I think this focus area is one of the area and the sites that has been identified, although we'll continue to go through the feasibility process. Next slide, we'll ask you some questions and some polls. With that, what do you believe is the benefit of placing a multi-generation center in the Glen Ridge area? We'll just take a little longer, make sure everyone votes. We really appreciate your time tonight. and giving us really good insight. Okay, so 31 is a tie between it is easy access by car, and it will have a positive impact on my community. Awesome. Followed by 18, I view this area as a visible, welcoming community hub. And then other. Okay, next question is, what do you believe is the drawback of placing a multi-generational center in the Glen Ridge area?
And while you're answering, I'll just note that for any of you who are maybe selecting other or none, if you want to use the questions box, feel free to send us a comment as to what that other benefit or other drawback for the Glen Ridge area might be. We really do want to know, some of the more nuanced answers. I think it's especially important in this one, as many of you are selecting other or none.
Okay, so we have 48% is other or none. As Kayla said, if you can just put in a box if it's definitely none and you find that there's no drawbacks to the site, that would be welcoming to hear. Or if there's other issues, that would also be welcoming to hear. It looks like we have 29% says it's not so easy to access by bike or transit. We have the next poll.
And so that's actually, that one there is the final poll.
That's the final poll. Okay. Well, thank you, Kayla, and I'll turn it over to Karen.
Well, thank you, Harold and Kayla. And I'm actually going to bounce it back to Kayla. And this is our question and answer period.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask Claire to come online video-wise, because she is really my co-project manager here, and Katie has been sorting through a lot of questions that we have. So I just want to encourage all of you still out there to please be submitting questions. I know she's got a few teed up for us, but it's not too late to get those in. And of course, you can also use the questions box to add any comments you may have. Obviously with polls, this can be kind of difficult to have a little bit more of that nuance. So please feel free to send us that. Katie, can you talk? Can you hear me?
Sure, yes. Hey, this is Katie, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been submitting questions. Just to elevate a couple of them to the panel, we've gotten several questions about the timeline. What's the timeline of the current process? What's the timeline for actually the center itself? So if any of the panelists or you could speak to that, I think the community would appreciate it.
Sure. So I think that's a two-part question. I'll answer this process itself, and then maybe Claire, if you want to answer more of the timeline for the buildings independently. So this process, which has just gotten underway within the past few months, is actually an 18-month long process. So we still have quite a ways to go, which you can imagine with all of the different inputs that we have to consider. By this December, we will have phase 1 of the process complete. And so that is identifying what the program will look like, what the potential locations could look like, and then we'll have actually a report and a meeting with planning board. Hopefully, I said December, but really more winter, so it could even be into February, January, February timeline. And then we will actually finish the process looking at more of the concepts, kind of seeing what a building could look like on the preferred site into next year. And so that would conclude, phase 2 would conclude at the end of 2021. Claire, do you want to talk a little bit about the buildings themselves?
Sure. So as Kayla earlier mentioned, there are 3 simultaneous feasibility studies happening at once in service areas 2, 3, and 4. And ideally, the goal is to have 1 multi-generational center in each service area for the county. Part of Brailsford and Dunleavy's work is to develop an implementation plan for us. So 2 of these service areas require probably some land acquisition. The 3rd one, at the moment, we don't think does, but it's possible that it will. So they're going to be looking at all those pieces of the process, the land acquisition, the site clearing, any sort of demolition that needs to be done, and give us a good implementation plan for how we should sequence all of this. So it might not be that one center is built first and one center is built last. It might be that pieces of each of them are happening simultaneously or happening in sequence. So they're gonna provide that to us, and it'll all be presented as part of our CIP as we move forward, and it'll really inform how we make decisions related to our CIP and our spending.
Great. We've gotten one. I just want to encourage everyone to keep sending your questions in through that question function in the webinar toolbar. Another question we've gotten is that the only site option? Speaking about, I guess, the Glen Ridge area, folks want to know what the site options are.
So no, it's not. And we encourage you to actively, if you have some potential sites that you think might make sense and would fit our criteria, please send that. We are looking, that is the site that the commission owns within that focused area. But as you probably noticed on the map, that focus area stretches a decent amount even down into near the New Carrollton and the metro area. And so we are trying to look at all of our options, but wanted to better understand what you see as the benefit and drawback to that 450, 410 focused area. So.
Great. Oh, I'm sorry, was someone else going to add a point there? The next question that we got, which I think is interesting, is about the building and the architectural statement that might be made. Folks are curious about what the building could actually look like, and can you make an architectural statement with the building here?
A motto. It's your dream question, right?
Right.
My dream question. The intent will be to have the building represent what's happening inside and be able to be able to tell people and be able to demonstrate what the activities that are going within the building. So to that extent, it will be some level of statement of the participation of the community and of the activities that are being used inside and played inside and outside for that matter. So
yeah, and I think it would probably be also important to state that the design itself will not be a part of this process. That's like a future down the road activity based on what the plan for implementing each of these would look like. So there would be a lot more community involvement before we got to a design, for sure.
We've got another question. We've gotten actually several questions and comments about traffic mitigation. It seems like some folks in the community are concerned about traffic, the road leading to Glen Ridge, and especially around the school day traffic there. So how will that be mitigated, or how is that being considered through this process?
Claire, do you want to talk a little bit about how y'all handle traffic studies and things as part of your?
Yeah, as part of this process, when we do site selection and as part of any future process as well, when we're actually, siting a building and the ingress egress on the site, we will be looking at traffic, and that is a huge consideration. And I know we saw some concern in the chat about the location of the Glen Ridge Elementary School and that it is tight back there. So we'll be looking at lots of options. We'll be trying to think creatively. We were trying to look at it, if there are alternative routes in and out. There's a lot of opportunity with, what's happening with the Purple Line to have a location that is near the Purple Line. But, traffic in this area in general, inside the Beltway, traffic's always a concern. It's something that's at the forefront of our thinking.
Great. Another topic we've gotten several questions on is about how this would fit into like existing centers. Folks are pretty aware that SPLEX, the Sports and Learning Complex, is very close by. So one, wouldn't this just be duplicating that? And do we need that? And two, will this create competition between the centers? For example, if schools and organizations host events at SPLEX, what happens when there are multi-generational centers everywhere? Will they all focus on the same things, or will they have different focuses? I guess people are just curious about how these new centers will fit in there.
Sure, so I can take a stab at this, and then Claire, if you want to add more, you can. I think the way we've been talking is kind of this hub and spoke model, or trying to think of how the network of Prince George's parks and rec facilities work together. And so that's something that we're actively thinking about as we plan for these. But in terms of the question on duplication, the Formula 2040 identified these 9 service areas based on what was needed across the entire county, and then breaking that down into smaller service areas. And so SPLEX is the facility for service area 5. I'm sure several of you are familiar with it because you travel there to use it. It's really the only facility of its kind that's really near you. And so right now, that's probably the one that you are drawn to utilize. But the hope would be that this facility would be more for your service area, and that you would be drawn to utilize this one. All of them are going to be unique to their service area. So there is a baseline program that we start by considering that was envisioned in Formula 2040 to have the double gymnasium, an aquatic feature, fitness, and indoor track. But then from that, we have the ability to really make it reflect each of the communities and their needs. And so last night we had a community meeting for service area 2. Next week we have one for service area 3, and each of these facilities should and will look different in terms of what they can offer, because it's based on what the community needs. But there will certainly still be common program themes across them all, because that was an identified need at the whole county level or at the whole commission level. So Claire, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
The only thing I'll add is that, as I'm sure you're aware, SPLEX is a happening place. It's busy, there's a lot going on there, and what we find when we look at how many people we have in the region and how much space we have for recreation, we're finding that as the population grows, some of those centers we already have on the ground are getting busier and busier. And so while we will try our best not to duplicate programs, and there might be some situations where SPLEX says, we are bursting at the seams for this program, and we need you to take some of that for us so that we can offer more to more people. And there might be situations where, like, for example, the track and field there. Track and field is huge. It's always packed. If they are finding that there is a need for track and field competitive events and they can't fill that need because they are turning people away, they might say, we need another location somewhere in the county where we can have some additional services.
Yeah, we heard that in our focus groups about how hard it can be to find swim times, right? So we already know that some duplication is needed, right?
And I just wanted to say, since you all started answering this question, we've gotten a couple of extra comments kind of validating that point. Folks have trouble getting in the pool at SPLEX because of usage, and also large events at FedEx Field and other kind of events there make it limited and overcrowded. Another question we've gotten is about how folks can stay in the loop on what's going on here. I see the website is posted on this final slide you're on, but are there other ways folks can stay in the loop, especially as decisions are made, or they'll stay connected to the important decision points through this process?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the website, number one, this is the shortened link that will take you there. But certainly the website, we are going to be constantly updating. Thank you for attending and registering to attend tonight, because now we can also reach out to you and inform you of future meetings that will be occurring as part of this process, and make sure that you're invited to that. And then the method of outreach by which you heard about tonight's meeting, we will also be conducting that same outreach when it comes to our next set of meetings. So we hope, this is something we told last night too, we really hope that you share this information with your neighbors, your friends, your listservs. We will be posting on the website later this week or early next week a recording of this presentation, and then we'll also have an opportunity for the individuals that go and view that there to then take a survey that contains the exact same poll questions you were able to participate in tonight. So this is not the only opportunity or the last chance for you to be involved or for you to tell your neighbor to get involved.
A lot of the questions we're getting are great feedback and comments. So not as many real questions for information from the team, but I'm seeing a lot of great information that we can use after this, including amenities and equipment for seniors, tumbling, pool space. So we appreciate those. Keep them coming.
Yeah, great. We'll absolutely use those comments. Any other final questions, just as this is coming to a close?
One question just came in about prioritization throughout the county of these multi-generational centers. So this may be one for Bridget or Claire on the process, but the question is, are you going to prioritize centers in the service areas furthest away from existing centers? For example, places like Marlow Heights and Sweetland and other places with nothing like this.
I'll let
Bridget, you wanna, or I'm happy to.
Sorry, go for it. I was going to find the mute button, Claire, go for it. Sorry.
So we are looking at them all simultaneously. We have conducted a needs assessment that tells us how much square footage we have of space in every service area, what our population is, and what the deficit is. And so I can tell you that Service Area 3 and Service Area 2 have the highest deficit in the county. And if you think about it, they have a lot of centers, but they have a lot of people. And so we really try to look at the centers plus the number of people we have, plus the areas that are really growing. But those areas that are not growing are a really important one as well. And I'll say the Service Area 4 came in number 3, really, really close, which is why we're looking at the 3 together. They were really neck and neck. Service Area 7 comes in a little bit behind them. That is one of the service areas that actually is seeing a little decrease in population in our county, but they do have a huge need. And so we are looking into Marlow Heights, looking into whether or not a multi-generational center will fit there, and if not, where the best location is. And that is a separate effort that is happening. We are also looking at, for Service Area 5, for example, what 2040 told us was that sports and learning met the need for the indoor, aquatic, and recreation space, but that we really need an outdoor pool. So the Walker Mill Master Plan is currently looking at that. In Service Area 1, Fairland, we're going to be doing a master plan for Fairland in the upcoming years, and that's going to look at that service area and the feasibility study there. So we're really trying to do all of our feasibility studies in the next couple of years so we can start to look at prioritizing when we construct these and how.
Good question.
Somebody asked a question about site selection and whether Capitol Plaza was being considered for a site in the service area.
Harold, are you familiar? Or Claire, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Harold.
Clear. Well, we're looking at all the areas that's within the focus, the focus area, and Capitol Plaza has, been under different ownerships and, and considerations. So I guess we can look into that, if Claire, you want to add anything to it?
Capitol Plaza, I think, was looked at years ago when the University of Maryland was studying putting a Landover Hills Community Center in this area. So I think it's a site that we've looked at before and a site that we'll definitely look at again and see if it's a possibility.
I'm not
Alright.
seeing any other new questions flow into the Q&A function right now.
Okay.
Oh, actually, as soon as I said that, I was probably gonna, just my luck, get a good question. And I'm not sure if folks know the answer to this one right now, or if this would be something we follow up with the community on later. But with regards to sports and learning, has the county learned anything from sports and learning that you should do or not do, as far as lessons learned to include what's been successful versus what might we intentionally want to do differently from sports and learning?
That's a great question. I can kind of say a few things, and then Claire, if you want to tag along. I think first, as part of this process, the first thing that we wanted to do was talk to individuals that are managing, operating the already existing multi-generational centers. And so we did speak with individuals at Sports and Learning. We spoke to individuals at SARC in the southern area as well, in addition to the facilities that exist within the specific service areas 2, 3, and 4 themselves. And I think, you know, the biggest thing that sticks out to me right now in terms of SPLEX was the popularity of certain programs and how they manage that, and then how they also operate that facility, and some considerations for us to think about when programming and what maybe adjacencies make sense, and things for how they operate it. I think SPLEX is also, you know, really unique because it is originally was designed to be broader even than its service area, and so it is serving a really big region right now. And so we learned about what it looks like to be serving that broader regional model, not just the small neighborhood there. It was kind of the first of its kind for the county. I don't know, Claire, if you want to add anything specific lessons learned. That's more of that high level, and I'm trying to think of a few off the top of my head, Katie, that even in some of those meetings we heard about.
I think they're definitely, like you said, it's not a young building, and I think we've learned a lot of maintenance lessons from SPLEX that we will then take and use in future buildings. You know, how the pool was built, how you access different things, and how we align the different specialty rooms and programs. I think we learn a lot of those building lessons from SPLEX and can employ those at other facilities.
Yeah, and I'm even thinking about, like, when we spoke to, you know, people that were at Fairlands versus Sports and Learning, and how, you know, their facilities could maybe do similar things aquatics wise, but one of them focuses on, you know, the learn to swim, whereas another focuses more on youth clubs and competitive leagues. And it was more of a decision they made based on what they were seeing, you know, in terms of who was coming to the building. So things like that.
That is a great point. And that was a great lesson learned up at Fairland, is how do you have competitive sports and everyday people coming in for everyday use at the same time? How do you manage the traffic? How do you manage the use of space? You know, how do you have it so that people can do learn to swim and a competition can happen at the same time? And we've definitely learned those kinds of lessons.
Another question we've received is about membership fees, about what that will look like. What will it cost to use the centers, if anything?
So I think there's kind of two parts of this. This is how we talked about this last night. Was the first is, you know, the commission has several centers and multi-generational centers across the county where there is kind of an established model, and I think we would start by looking at what those are and understanding those programs. But then also, as part of this, we're trying to better understand what aligns and makes sense for each community, and what makes sense for the program that's going to be in each facility, to understand, you know, how can we recoup a certain percentage of the cost, but also maintain its accessibility. And Claire talked a little bit last night about how, you know, we can think about the menu of programs that are offered. Some of them may be more premium programs, while others need to maintain that baseline level of access for everyone. And so that hasn't been determined yet. We have not developed that yet, but there are other models that exist currently within other commission facilities. And Claire, I don't know if you want to add anything to that piece.
I think that was perfect.
No new questions here. I think this has been a lot of great information.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone so much for attending and sticking with us. I know these virtual meetings are a little bit different than what we usually do, but we really appreciate it. Just one reminder before we lose you all, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, visit the website, write it down. We will be posting a recording of this video as well as the survey for them to get involved. And then in 3 weeks-ish, we're about to start advertising for our Spanish language meetings, and we'll be conducting these exact same meetings in Spanish, as well as hosting office hours where individuals can call in and at whatever language they may need, there will be opportunities for them to engage in that way. So don't think this is your last opportunity, but we really appreciate you attending with us here tonight. So thank you very much, and have a great night.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.